All right, so get this right. You sent over like articles, research papers. I even saw some handwritten notes in there, all about this universal axiom thing.
It's kind of wild to see, like all these different, sources all pointing to the same idea. Seems like you're really digging into how, like, totally different fields like math and, I don't know, philosophy actually connect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's kind of mind blowing. But okay, so let's dive in. What exactly is this universal axiom? One paper called it like a master equation for intelligence.
Yeah, and not just like computers becoming smarter. It's about like us, how we're intelligent.
Oh, okay. So this isn't just about building some supercomputer.
Not exactly. It's more like imagine jazz improvisation, right? You have the base structure in this case, an equation, intelligence N,
Yeah.
1 caret, X, Y, Z, A, B, C. But the cool part, it's how each piece jams with the others. It's like human thought, making choices, even like the fabric of reality.
Okay, now you're blowing my mind a little. We're talking like the essence of being human almost.
Exactly. And that's where those variables, those letters in the equation, that's where they come in. Each one's a key part of intelligence, all tangled up together. Like take EN, that's exponential growth, that snowball thing.
Yeah.
Ever get crazy into learning something, and the more you learn, the faster you pick it up. Boom, EN.
Dude, I'm feeling that right now with this axiom thing. The more we talk about, the more my brain's like, whoa.
And just like a perfect gymnastics routine, gotta have balance, right? Power and elegance, that's where F concore N comes in.
Yeah.
The Fibonacci sequence, that's not just math class stuff. That's nature's design. You ever look at a seashell, those spirals, or how leaves grow on a stem? Fibonacci sequence, creating order out of chaos.
That is wild. It makes you wonder what other patterns are hidden, just waiting for us to find them.
And that feeling right there, that awe, that's important if we want to unlock what the universal axiom can really do. And speaking of hidden things, we got to talk about X, the axiomatic subjectivity scale. Think of those optical illusions, where your brain's like, I see it, but it's tricking you. It's X, it's like, how much are we fooled by those illusions every day when what we believe ain't really real?
A reality check on, like ourselves? That's kind of scary, man.
Yeah. Right. Makes you realize we don't always see things clear as we think. And once you start doubting what you think you know, that's when you can get your actions lined up with your real purpose. And that is the y-axis. That's why. It's about vision, having that drive behind everything you do, whether it's your job, your relationships, or just something you love.
Like that saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there.
Oh, great.
Then it's y-axis. It's about picking the right road for you.
Exactly. Now, hold on tight, because this one's wild. Z, the time sphere. What if our idea of time, just a straight line, is totally wrong? What if it's way more complex? Deja vu, premonitions, that kind of stuff. The time sphere says maybe we're just catching glimpses of something bigger.
Okay, my brain just did a backflip. We're talking like multi-dimensional time. This is some sci-fi stuff.
And that feeling, pushing the limits of what we think is possible, that is what the universal axiom is about. But let's bring it back down to earth for a sec. This equation, it's not just floating out there. It's made up of things that are very real in our lives. Impulses, that's A, elements B, and pressure C.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think of baking a cake, right? First, you got your impulses, those sparks that get you baking in the first place. Maybe it's your friend's birthday or you're just craving something sweet. Then you got your elements. Ingredients, skills you bring, flour, sugar, your grandma's secret recipe, all that. Finally, pressure got to be done by the party, got to impress your friends, even just wanting to nail it. All of that shapes how the cake turns out.
So the cake is like intelligence.
Bingo. And just like baking, knowing how each part plays with the others, that's the difference between a masterpiece and a total flop.
All right, I'm with you so far. But you said before that this axiom can solve some really tough math problems, like Olympiad-level stuff. How does that work?
Now that is where it gets really cool. It's not about the axiom spitting out the answer. It's more like it shines a light on the path, showing you those elegant connections that lead to the solution. Not brute force, but seeing the structure, the why behind the math.
It's like instead of memorizing the notes, you're learning the music.
Exactly. That deeper understanding, connecting things that seem totally separate, that's the power of this thing. It's not just about numbers. It's about a whole new way of seeing everything.
Man, I'm starting to get why you're so into this. This isn't just about equations. It's about, well, everything.
You're getting it. And trust me, we're just getting started.
Okay, you got me hooked. Now I got to know how it actually solved those Olympiad problems.
Well, let's dig into the specifics then, one that really caught my eye.
Okay, so we're talking about the International Math Olympiad, right? Like, these are some serious brain benders, even for, like, math whizzes, what kind of problems are we talking, and how does this axiom thing even help?
Imagine, like, you got to prove something is true, not just for a few numbers, but for any number you can think of. This axiom, it's like it shows you the blueprint, the framework behind the problem, so you can build a proof that's like rock solid.
Okay, but can I get an example? I'm more of a visual learner, you know?
Oh,
Show me the goods.
absolutely. One source used it to crack this crazy triangle problem, right? Remember that rule? Like all the angles inside a triangle always add up to 180 degrees?
Yeah, vaguely. Pretty sure I just memorized it for the test back in the day.
Well, the axiom, it shows you why that's true, like the underlying structure. They use that time sphere thing, the interconnectedness, to demonstrate how, like, just drawing one extra line parallel to a side, boom, it's like a domino effect. Suddenly you see how all the angles relate in a totally new way.
Whoa, so it's like this axiom gives you X-ray vision into the problem,
Oh,
seeing connections you'd never notice otherwise.
you got it. And it's not just geometry either. Another source, they used it to break down this super tough algebra problem, with exponents and variables all over the place, look like gibberish. But by focusing on the y-axis, that step-by-step logic, they untangled it like a detective piecing together clues.
So it's not about having a magic formula, it's more like having the right mindset, a strategy to tackle any problem.
Exactly. The axiom, it's like a mental toolbox, making you a better problem solver, whether it's equations or real-life stuff.
Speaking of real life, you said this goes way beyond math, right? How do we use something this theoretical for practical problems, like in the real world?
Now that is where it gets really exciting. Imagine tackling things like how do we use resources best? How do we make supply chains super efficient? Even like fighting climate change in a smarter way.
Okay, now you're talking about some serious impact, but how does that even work?
Remember those parts we talked about? Exponential growth, Fibonacci sequence, that subjectivity scale thing? Those aren't just ideas. They're forces shaping our world. The axiom, it's like it decodes how those forces work together so we can make better choices, see consequences ahead of time, build systems that are like smarter, more sustainable.
So it's like we'd have a set of like universal rules, but they apply to everything. Math, global problems, even like you said, our brains.
You got it. And speaking of brains, one of the wildest things, this axiom might just help us understand consciousness itself way better.
Whoa, hold up now. We started with triangles, and now we're talking about like what makes us conscious.
Yeah, so one source to get into this quantum consciousness function, don't worry, I'll spare you the math this time, but basically it's saying maybe consciousness isn't stuck inside our heads, maybe it's woven into like the fabric of reality.
Wait, are we talking about like ESP, telepathy?
Not quite. But what this axiom says is we're just scratching the surface of what consciousness is. It's like maybe our minds can do way more than we think. Intuition, creativity, even those aha moments, maybe those are glimpses of a much deeper connection to everything around us.
Man, that is a lot to unpack. Sounds kind of like we're stepping into science fiction territory here.
Maybe. But what sci-fi one day is science fact the next, right? The important thing is keep an open mind. This axiom, it pushes us to explore, to think, what if our reality is way bigger, way more connected than we ever imagined?
I'm definitely feeling that. Okay, so we've talked about how this axiom can solve crazy math problems, how it could change the way we tackle real-world issues, even how it might help us understand our own minds. But like, what about the ethics of it all? That's got to be a big deal, right?
Absolutely. With any powerful tool, you got to be careful, right? And especially as we start using it for things like AI. And that's actually a key part of the whole discussion.
So we've talked about all the amazing things this axiom can do, but also like the responsibility, you know? How do we make sure it's used for good, especially with AI getting so advanced?
Well, it's interesting, right? The ethics are kind of built right in. Remember that y-axis we talked about? It's not just your own goals. It's like a moral compass baked right into the equation.
Okay, but couldn't someone like mess with the compass itself, change the y-axis so the AI is working for them, not for everybody?
That's where that whole interconnected thing gets really important. Think of it like a spider web. Yeah. Touch one part, the whole thing vibrates. Those sources you shared, they said if you try to tweak just one thing, it's like a domino effect. The system's designed to self-correct, to push things back towards ethical outcomes.
Whoa, so it's like trying to cheat at a game where the rules keep changing to make it fair.
Exactly. It's not easily tricked. And on top of that, transparency is key. The sources kept saying, we need AI that can explain itself, like its decision-making process. It's got to be an open book, not some secret code, so we know why it's doing what it does.
Makes sense. More transparency, harder to hide any funny business.
Exactly. It builds trust, accountability too. And those are kind of crucial when you're talking about AI that can be super powerful, you know.
Yeah, for sure. But it's not just about AI, is it? Some of the stuff we read talked about using the axiom for, like, the ethical problems we already have, misinformation, political divides, even just resources being unfair. How do you even start to use this thing for stuff that feels so, like, ingrained in the world?
I, I think it starts with a different way of seeing those problems. The axiom, it pushes us to use that same like clear thinking we use for math or physics, but on these big social issues. Instead of just arguing about the symptoms, it's like using the axiom to trace those problems back to their roots to really get why they exist in the first place.
So it's about going deeper, right? Past the surface arguments to find some common ground, some understanding of the systems that connect us all.
Exactly. It's about realizing that our actions have consequences, that what we do today affects everything that comes after.
Hmm.
And the axiom, with its focus on how everything's linked, on thinking long term, it gives us a way to make choices that are more ethical, choices that are better for everyone.
Man, this whole deep dive has been a trip. We started with like an equation, and somehow we ended up talking about the nature of intelligence, consciousness, even the ethics of it all. It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's definitely given me a lot to think about.
That's the power of these conversations, right? They spark something, a curiosity to explore, to question, to see the world in new
For
ways.
sure. And for anyone listening who might be feeling like, whoa, information overload, what's the one thing you hope they take away from all of this?
That the universal axiom, it's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. It's about looking at this crazy, complex world and realizing, yeah, it's complicated, but we humans, we have this incredible ability to figure things out, to create a better future, and hopefully a future that's built on wisdom, on compassion, on really understanding how connected we all are.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, on that note, I think it's time to come up for air from this deep dive. Thanks for joining me on this wild ride.
Anytime, it's been a blast.